Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortbox Podcast.
Season 9.
Yo, check that shit out.
About to drop that comic book talk show that brings you the best.
The
Shortbox Podcast is recorded live from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yo, Shortbox Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for pressing play, and thanks for being here with us today. If you're new to the show, welcome. My name is Botter, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comics and pop culture inspired by comics. This is episode 408, and today we're recapping some recent comic news and announcements from this week, aka last week by the time most of you hear this. Now, I'm not alone in this mission today. This is not an interview episode, so I've got a crew here with me, all right? Here with me in the Shortbox studio, and holding it down on mic number 2, is the special Edmund Danzart. What up, Ed?
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing, Ed?
I'm good.
Normal listeners might not know this, but you dropped a little extra bonus, a self-hosted bonus episode over on the Patreon.
Yeah, I did a little mini review of Junji Ito's Gyo for Halloween, so I figured it fit the season, and I'm just trying to get my setup so I can start, adding a little bit more to the Patreon listeners.
That's what I like to hear, man. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm all here for everyone branching out, getting their own spinoff shows, all right? And any way I can help out. And not only that, but Ed, genuinely, it was a great concept. You got some good commentary from the patrons over on Patreon. So I'm looking forward to more stuff from you.
Awesome, appreciate it.
And on mic number 3 is a special guest co-host making his Shortbox debut. I met him at New York Comic Con, finally got to make his acquaintance. He's someone I've been following online for a minute now. So I'm excited that we were able to make this happen so quickly. Online, he goes by Regie Collects. He's the winner of 6 2022 Comic Book Community Awards. I didn't even know there was Community Awards. That's pretty awesome. And he describes himself as your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector. As someone that got to meet him in person, the former definitely holds true as well as the latter. Shortbox Nation, let's welcome Regie Collects to the show. Regie, how you doing, brother? Welcome to the show, man.
Anytime I'm feeling bad about myself, I'm going to play that back because there is nothing but the warm and fuzzies that come through the microphone or the headset when I hear that. I wish I still look as good as I used to back in the day. Now I'm just somebody's dad.
Now you're just bragging. Now you're just bragging, Reggie.
I'm just somebody's dad now, brother. I'm on the sidelines at the soccer match trying to not huff and puff as I play with my kid whenever they have a break,
But the listeners can't see he's juggling kettlebells while he's saying this.
oh, Ed, well done, sir.
Well, here's the thing, Ed. listeners can see this because we are recording video with this as well. So if you want to see the Swolger for yourself, ladies and gents, check out the video version of this podcast. But Reggie, tell me about these 6 the comic book community awards. What are they?
So Botter, that was a little wrong there. Wrong. I'm the winner of 10.
Oh wow. Well, where's that at? Let me go ahead and give another one.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, come on.
10.
Sorry, my apologies.
Bro, you short him 4?
2021 and 2022. So the channel is the most winning YouTube content channel out there, right? Focused on comics, right? So the Comic Book Community Awards has been going on for the last couple of years. Put together by some really awesome people, and I've been fortunate to win multiple awards. And honestly, whether it's 6, it's 4, it's 10, I am honored that people would actually take the time to nominate the channel and then vote for the channel and then have me win. It's awesome.
I wanted to know, what were the awards themselves? What were they for?
Oh, brother, there's a host of them. So I think it's most entertaining, community builder, channel of the year, like best ongoing series, because I had a couple of series like the Ready, Set, Go show that I used to do on Sunday, and then Comics Today. I think Comics Today won for Wednesday. I mean, we had a string of hundreds of shows for both of those, but you're putting me on the spot because I can't remember them all.
It's too many. You won too many. You can't even remember.
It happened.
The community builder is one that I'm particularly proud of. Because, anybody that's part of comics knows that the community is what it's all about, right? Absolutely. And the fact that the channel was honored to receive that is huge, man, because it's all about the community. And I put out a lot of content that may not get a ton of views, but the videos are designed to make the community stronger. They're designed to help people be smarter about the hobby of comic book collecting. And so again, to win these awards it's huge.
Wow. Well said.
Awesome.
I love hearing that because, it's easy, I think, to get, especially as a content creator, regardless if you're talking comics, YouTube, or doing podcasting, I think it's easy to get, in your head about views and numbers, and sometimes forget like what the mission was, like, making a positive impact on this community, contributing in a positive way, in a meaningful way.
Having fun was honestly like my number one. I used to watch these guys like Jim Mint and Reaper Tate and ETA Nick and sell my comics back in the day. These guys were on YouTube and they were just having fun. And I was like, man, I want to have some fun, because I don't have these friends in my everyday life that were into comics. And I was like, I just want to have fun. And that's where it started, and then that fun led me to spending lots of money, like doing unboxings. And I was like, well, I can't do unboxings anymore. So I was like, well, I've got to come up with something else. And that something else became, well, how can I give back to the community that has given me so much in terms of, just making the hobby more enjoyable, because you can talk to other folks that are into the same nerdy stuff that you are,
Well said. Well said. And I want to definitely talk to you about some of the other projects and things that you've got going on. I mean, from your comic collecting book and then your very own comic series and publishing company. Definitely want to get into that more. But welcome to the show. I'm glad we were able to make this happen very quickly. And I want to give a big shout out to our guy, Kyle Willis, a mutual friend of ours that actually introduced us. We met at his booth at New York Comic Con, and, it was easy going from there. So glad to make this happen, man. All right, let's go back to the listeners. Listeners, we got a full show for you today. In the immortal words of my guy, Jon Stewart, we got things to talk about.
We've got things to talk about.
We have 3 primary topics to cover today, and those include a report put out by Variety that outlines in excruciating detail the quote-unquote crisis at Marvel. Their words, not mine. We'll also be talking about DC's plan to avoid superhero fatigue, kind of like a pseudo response to everything going on at Marvel, and how they hope to not be, stuck in the same boat. DC also announced a new line of comics called Compact Comics that they're launching next year with the hopes of getting into big box stores and attracting a whole new batch and crop of readers to comics. And like most of our news recap episodes, and really just all of our episodes, we've got timestamps for every topic we'll be discussing today in the show notes. So if you're someone that wants to jump around, or if you just want to hear a specific topic, check the show notes for timestamps. You'll also find, hint, hint, you'll also find a link to our merch store in the show notes. And you can cop one of these awesome short box, corner box shirts that I'm wearing on the video version of the podcast. We're actually running a sale on everything in our merch store from now until the end of the year. You can save 10% off your entire order when you use the discount code YOO, YOO, just 2 O's. We still have a few gauntlet hats. I know we've got a few shirts in different sizes available. And if we're just being honest, we're trying to move some old inventory to make room for some new stuff. I think we're well overdue some new designs, some new shirts and merch. So if you've been wanting to support the show or if you've been wanting to grab some merch from us, now would be the time. Visit the shortboxstore.bigcartel.com to do some early holiday shopping. And don't forget to use that discount code YOO, YOO, to save 10%. Shameless plugs aside, let's get into our first topic, and maybe the one that made the biggest splash across the online comic community and just online in general. I had a lot of people talking this past week about this article that was put out by Variety on Wednesday, November 1st, written by Tatiana Siegel. It's a 2,000-plus word report, and it's titled Crisis at Marvel, Jonathan Majors' Backup Plans, The Marvels Reshoots, Reviving Original Avengers, and More Issues Revealed. The title basically says it all. The article goes into a lot of detail, explaining the various challenges and issues that the MCU has faced these last 3+ years. All right, we're talking about issues in regards to just subpar product, right? From their movies to their TV series to the reception from fans and critics alike. I don't think it's crazy to say that Marvel has struggled to recapture some of that magic and that flame they had with the earlier phases 1 through 3. I think the MCU struggled to find a good footing with phase 4. I think they had a lot more questionable shows and TV, and the reception just was lukewarm among fans and critics alike. Granted, there are exceptions to that. There was definitely some shining moments from phase 4. Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home. I enjoyed Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, Black Panther 2. But overall, it feels that this current phase 4, and even into phase 5, the MCU just isn't doing it for most fans and critics and even other industry professionals and directors and actors. All have something to say about the MCU. And this article attempts to paint a comprehensive timeline and really kind of pull the curtain back into the various challenges and problems they've been facing. Challenges and problems such as Jonathan Majors' legal issues and how that's put the studio in a very peculiar spot in regards to their lead antagonist that's supposed to carry the franchise into the next few years. It's not something that they can rely on. So the article talks about potential pivots and then maybe changing the focus from Kang the Conqueror to maybe, Doctor Doom was mentioned in the article. The article also goes into detail about some of the challenges with their visual effects department. This department being forced to work long hours with very little overtime pay to meet these unrealistic and last-minute schedules, and the strain that's put on those teams and those employees. Through the article, we also learn about the very costly reshoots for She-Hulk and the upcoming Marvels movie and how a lack of basic script development and quality control has led to issues with other projects and pre-production projects at that, like Blade. And beloved MCU maestro Kevin Feige isn't spared either. He catches some shots in this article regarding him just being spread too thin and just being a control freak and dropping the ball on a few occasions. And there's more going on at the House of Mouse, if you will, that the article goes into. Those were just some of the key takeaways that I found interesting that I wanted to share and kick us off with. I'm going to take a stop right here because I feel like I've been talking a lot. And I want to hear, Reggie, I'm going to go to you because I think you covered this. And this is something that, Reggie, I wanted to mention. I really like your content on Instagram. You managed to do basically these episodes in very digestible, bite-sized contents. A minute, sometimes less, maybe a little more, but I wanted to hear your initial opinions on this. Like, was there anything from this article that was new to you, that was, glaring, that kind of gave you maybe better insight into what's going on? Yo, This is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
There's a lot to unpack here, man. There's no doubt about it, right? And I've been covering a lot of this stuff, you know, on YouTube and also on Instagram because there's a lot to talk about, right? What I will say is that while the MCU's performance as of late hasn't been what we have come to expect, I think that there's reasons for that. During the pandemic, they tried to push out as much content as they possibly could because they had a captive audience, right? And their goal was to cram or to push out and cram down, you know, the channels as much content as they possibly could because people were sitting at home with nothing else to do. And so when you do that, when you accelerate your plans to take advantage of a once in a lifetime type of thing, something's going to suffer, right? And what suffered is the quality of what was coming out. And a lot of people like to blame the writers for that. But I think that, to one of your points earlier, I think a lot of people are to blame, right? The writers maybe took some shortcuts. The directors, the producers took a lot of shortcuts, right? One of the things that we've learned is that Marvel was actually green lighting a lot of these TV shows without actually following standard procedure in terms of doing a pilot and evaluating that pilot and giving feedback and tweaking it. They were saying, here's the cast. You've got a story. Go shoot the thing. And so they were writing it. They were filming it. They were then trying to fix it in post-production, which is why costs were going up like crazy. And that's why they had to do all those reshoots. They were doing it for the movies. They were also doing it for the TV shows. And as a result of trying to cram out all of this content, it backfired. 33 movies and 12 TV shows, if you include, you know, the stuff that's come out on Disney Plus, right? That is a lot of content, right? Now, by that same token, I think people should be very thankful to the MCU because $30 billion over the last decade has literally kept the lights on for Hollywood. So people like Martin Scorsese should actually be thankful that the MCU has existed because without the MCU, Hollywood would be in poor shape. But like you, I've been talking for a minute, so I'll go ahead and pause to see what else you guys have to say.
Did anything stand out to you, Ed, as far as like any of these challenges or you know, behind the scenes things? Did anything stand out?
Reading these articles, and like you said, there's a lot of people to blame, but even as far as on the creative side of it too, that I've read that there's a lot of people who don't want to do Marvel projects because of the creative constraints, because you have to fit this broader narrative that they want to tie this next phase with a new big bad. And plus, like you were saying, you know, they had the captive audience that are also trying to sell subscriptions to Disney Plus too. So they wanted, you know, they didn't want just a bunch of old Mickey Mouse cartoons on there. They wanted to attract new customers too. So they're building a whole new platform of a whole new way to, you know, basically view this entertainment. And it's, like that first, I mean, they had a decade plus of run. That's lightning in a bottle that you cannot recreate and you cannot sustain. So it's, and I know it's, you know, this is a corporate thing after all, you know, it's that can make cool creative things, but they're looking at the money. You know, they want money. They want to squeeze every cent out of these IP that they paid a ton of money to get. That and like Star Wars, but they feel like, you know, if nothing is out in 6 months, people are going to go elsewhere for their entertainment dollar. You know,
speaking about that bar for success, there was a part of this report that I noted here where it kind of outlines like this sense of unrealistic expectations for success. And somewhere in this article, it mentions that if a movie doesn't hit $500 million, to them, it's a failure.
Yeah.
And you know what other, obviously, I think it's safe to say every movie studio would love to hit $500 million. But what other studio or any other company has those type of goals? It could only be someone that has kind of pinned themselves in this corner. You know what I'm saying? You get to see the corner they put themselves in, where success, they're so used to everything being a hit. I think, Reggie, you had mentioned that, you know, the $30 billion over 32 films, $30 billion over 11 years of the MCU, you know, from Iron Man to Endgame. 30 billion is more than some countries' GDP. You know, like that is wild to think of. So, you know, it's like, how do you, when you've been to the top, how do you go back down? How do you adjust, you know, what your parameters for success is? Like, it's almost unmanageable.
But you have to.
Yeah, that is the business, right?
And here's why. One, you cannot sustain that level of excellence. You can't. But when you look at the movie industry, it has not recovered from the pandemic. When you look at the total box office and the total number of movie tickets that are being sold, it's not even close. 2019 to 2023, it's not close. So your expectations and your definition of success has to change because the economy is different and the landscape in which you are playing, i.e. movie theaters, has changed. The $500 million, that's Oppenheimer and Barbie aside. That potentially will not happen for a while unless the quality just skyrockets all of a sudden, which is possible.
There was a line that mentions that normally Disney does not, they normally only engage employees and I guess friends and families of employees for their movie screenings, like to get like feedback. And for the Marvels, which this article goes into a lot of detail about, like why the Marvels, even though it hasn't been released, is already kind of set to fail. You know, is a prime example of, you know, the fall of the MCU, if you will. But I found that pretty fascinating that I guess it's not routine for them to just like have a test audience. And I think, Reggie, it goes back to what you're saying, where they've been making these shortcuts and cutting corners. And, you know, this is coming to light. But I thought that was pretty fascinating that, wait, you're only showing these movies and pre-screening these movies to like your employees and friends and family?
Looks great, boss.
Yeah, you know what I'm
Don't
saying?
change
Like,
a thing.
how are you going to get an honest opinion? So I guess they showed the Marvels.
Thumbs up.
And your boss sits there and faces you as you watch, just waiting for you to, you know, make a funny face. That, you know, as a marketer myself, there is no way in the world that I would release something to the public that has not been first evaluated by other people. Like that's crazy. But again, they shot half of Daredevil Reborn, the new Daredevil season, without ever looking at the footage. And then they looked at the footage and they were like, this footage isn't good. You have to put controls in place.
You left the lens cap on the camera the whole time.
You have to put controls in place to evaluate what you're doing, man.
Yeah, they used to do a thing called dailies. That was like basically you look over the footage and you see what you need to reshoot or need to, you know, change the lighting or however, you know, whatever movie terms you want to use. That's crazy.
You just turn the camera on and just shoot, brother.
And go.
But I was surprised to see the stat in there that said that one episode of She-Hulk cost them $25 million an episode, which was more than, I guess, like any of the season finale episodes of Game of Thrones, which we all know. I forgot what the price of any of those episodes were, but those are very CGI heavy movies. There seems to be a lot of internal drama within MCU, from them bleeding money with things like She-Hulk and, you know, the price of visual effects and that the strain that it's having on that department, and, you know, how unhappy those folks are.
Yeah. And them not caring to put it out just because they need that content out there.
And then, you know, you start seeing some of the turmoil within, you know, them firing the head of their visual effects department. and finding any reason, right? Like, oh, wait, she started promoting this other movie and we were, She-Hulk is on fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, it paints everyone is pointing fingers at each other within the organization themselves.
I think that you're making some good points, right? Because, the challenge is we have maybe too much visibility into what is happening inside these organizations. Because what's happening here potentially isn't any different from any other organization, or maybe any other entertainment company. We are simply exposing that stuff to sunlight and then scrutinizing the heck out of it. Like that woman that was fired, she violated her contract. Like, and they gave her 3 shots on goal. Like, we don't think you should do this. You shouldn't do this. Hey, if you do this, we're going to fire you. And they ended up firing her. But, they burn through a lot of capital, right? The movies cost somewhere between 175 million to 250 million. I think the most expensive was Black Panther 2, which was shot during the pandemic. And so you've got all those costs. And I think She-Hulk was also filmed during that time, heavy CGI. People were probably working from home and all that other kind of stuff, which is why it's so expensive. But when you look at She-Hulk, I think when you look at the data, I think, 1.5 million people actually tuned in to watch She-Hulk the first week that it debuted, which is the same as Hawkeye, which was a show that was actually pretty well received. It actually beat out Secret Wars and Miss Marvel, but a lot of people will say that show was terrible, right? Was it really terrible, or were there a lot of people that just hated the person that was behind it and the way that She-Hulk was depicted and the way that Daredevil was depicted? Was it really that terrible? I don't know. I was entertained until the twerking started, and I was like, oh, maybe twerking's not the right thing to do,
I wonder how much that twerking scene cost them. The visual effects.
Oh, brother. Junk doesn't move like that easy without some assistance. Okay. On both sides, it took some assistance to make it work. But again, I think that when you are the king of the heel and you are dominating, everybody is going to scrutinize and take shots. You see legendary directors taking shots. Why? Because they can, right? And Disney has rested on its laurels. Kevin Feige has rested on his laurels. They got lazy. They got greedy. And, as a result, they've been punched in the face. And I think that they are taking a step back and basically saying, hey, we need to focus on quality and not quantity. And potentially, if they start putting out some good content, fingers crossed that people will be receptive to that.
Well said. And you know what? That transitions to maybe a positive side of this, because, it's not all gloom and doom that came out of this article. There was a little bit of some rays of sunshine. So they talk about the success of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, like, performing really well at the box office, but also being, having some positive reception from fans and critics alike. The unfortunate part of that, though, is the guy that directs that movie, James Gunn, ends up, that's his last hurrah. That's his last movie. Now he's with the distinguished competition, Mm-hmm. So it's like, damn, all right. So the one, maybe they could have finagled something having James Gunn maybe in a larger role. Well, we've lost that. And it kind of boils down to the chips that they haven't played quite yet. And that comes from their acquisition with, 21st Century Fox, those properties, things like Deadpool, X-Men, Fantastic Four. And I am a firm believer that I think when we get those, especially like those latter two, the Fantastic Four and X-Men, I think that will breathe a new life into the MCU. I see the effort and I commend them, like the fact that they're coming off of Endgame. And to this day, I will say, I thoroughly believe the MCU should have taken a hard 1 to 2 to 3 years just break. Let people just soak it in. Like, hey, Endgame, thus the name Endgame, right? Let's just end it for a little bit. Fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and get on my soapbox.
Uh-oh.
If I was the MCU, I would have went ahead and dropped focus on documentaries about, the last 10, 11 years of the MCU, right? Like, really let us, appreciate what we got. Like, to this day, there is not a comprehensive or cohesive documentary that features the stars of the show. And I don't know if they're saving it for maybe later to do some big, retrospective 20-year anniversary or whatever, 30-year anniversary. But I wish they would have just taken a chance to just, appreciate what we got, and celebrate the victory of 11 years of consistent, 32 films, this massive story, this giant feat in cinema. Like, I wish we would have just taken time to just slow down, breathe, and then bring on this new crop of characters. Because I think it was just too soon, like from the and that's discounting the pandemic and all this shit that, the emotional and mental strain that had on all of us. I think at the time it sounded good, like, oh man, we're going to get more MCU content and it's going to be on TV. I don't got to wait for a year. But clearly they just overshot, right? Like, it was an overcommitment. The plan was way too big considering the resources, right? Like, Kevin Feige can't check all of this. The visual effects can't keep up with all of this. And then one other thing that this article goes into is just the half-baked scripts. And I say that as a quotation because that was the exact phrasing one of the visual effects artists talks about. I don't think they give her credit or whatnot, but it was someone that worked on She-Hulk. And they talked about, like, we had to do a bunch of reshoots because the suits watched the show and realized by episode 6 or 8, oh, wow, we're just now seeing her transform. We should probably put that in the beginning, which cost them a bunch of time, a bunch of money. And, you start just seeing, like, all these cracks, and it could almost be just pointed at the very basics of just like, does it have a good script? Is the foundation well? No, not clearly. We're fucking running before we're even crawling.
And that's the thing with, doing pilots and stuff. You have your own platform. Why not shoot a pilot? See how reactions it gets. See if people give a shit. It's like, I like She-Hulk as a character, and I think they may have, from what I've seen, the little that I've seen, it's like they might have tried to do the John Byrne era She-Hulk, kind of the fourth wall breaking, but to mainstream audiences, they're thinking this is like a Deadpool. This is kind of like anyone that breaks the fourth wall is like a Deadpool, because that's the one that most people are familiar with that aren't into comics. So it's like they had this platform, and like, just repeating what you guys have said, but you have your own basically TV channel, old man terms, shoot pilot, shoot an hour, trying to combine to fit this bigger narrative. Like, I don't see what was, I like the Netflix stuff, like that was in the same universe, but it didn't have to mention it every 5 seconds. You see a kid in the DVD talking about the event, you see Easter eggs in there, but they're in their own little section of this world. The world is bigger than they make it, So I don't get, and like I said, they're not playing with action figures. These are real living people that want to do other stuff. They don't want to be Captain America for 30 years. They want to do other things. They're artists. Like, one of the last few things that I loved was my favorite thing was Werewolf by Night. That's probably my favorite MCU thing in a while, and like I said, short, sweet, you didn't really have to know the characters, you basically had to be, watched a few horror movies in your lifetime, and it was perfect.
I guess the good news is, all the problems we've listed and talked about is that they're not irreparable, right? It's not like these things can't be
they
fixed.
Got money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They've got plenty
broke.
of money. So the script thing, right? They can hire better writers. They can spend more time writing better scripts. The visual effects, that's something that I imagine it's way more complex, but that can be fixed. Like, a lot of these problems can be fixed. And as shitty as it sounds to say this, at least they didn't have these fuck ups with like big properties like X-Men and Fantastic Four. If you're going to take a swing and try some stuff and try to follow up from, your amazing act that was phases 1 through 4 and Endgame and all of that, at least it wasn't with, your other blue chips that could possibly save, what you got going on. Because imagine if they would have came out the gate with Fantastic Four and X-Men and they were plagued with these same issues,
Fox did that already. Fox did that already.
That is right. They did have a blueprint. They did have a blueprint to follow. You're right about
I was waiting for my opportunity to say that.
Don't do this. This is our blueprint. Do not do this.
Don't do this at all. What I will say too is that I don't think that these things are uncorrectable, right? I think that you've had a little bit of a break. Let's think about that, right? The writers have been on strike. The actors are still on strike. There is a break right now, literally giving, potentially, the leadership at Marvel, at Disney an opportunity to think a little bit before they start to act. The writers will have additional time. I think that the concerns expressed by the special effects people have been heard loud and clear and documented. And so maybe they should be given longer lead times to work on this stuff. Disney has admitted that they're going to focus on quality and not quantity, right? So I feel like they are saying the right stuff. My concern is the fandom. My concern is, will the fandom be able to recognize an improvement in quality, or will they be so jaded so as to not even see the improvement?
Where it's like, is it cool to just hate on MCU when clearly we've got a good product? Okay, I see what you're doing.
And I talk to a lot of people. I read a lot of comments. There are people that just regurgitate what they hear without thought. They invest no time thinking or even doing a simple Google search before it is all trash. It is all woke trash. If they come out with the X-Men, that is quintessential wokeness. think about the X-Men, bro.
Reggie, trust me, we've definitely said that plenty of times.
Right. So think about the X-Men. Even if the X-Men is fantastic, it will still be seen as woke by people because it's diverse. That just right from the diversity, it's woke trash. You haven't even seen it, but now you're saying it's trash. My fear is the fandom, and not even necessarily true comic book fans, the adjacent fandom that floods into the comment section to offer their opinion on something that they don't. I had somebody just today tell me Marvel and DC are superhero companies, that they've never published anything other than superhero comics. And I'm like, so first of all, you need to run a Google search, sir. You know? But it's that type of person that will leave the woke trash, the MCU comment, this is garbage, without really appreciating the source material. To your point, they've never even read a comic, but they have an opinion on what's good for comics.
But that's just kind of like a mob mentality too. You're just, that's the mob is going out.
But it's that mob mentality to some degree that is dooming a lot of stuff. Captain Marvel, or the Marvels, trash. Hasn't even come out. Trash. Why?
They don't like Brie Larson. Yeah.
Three women and Brie Larson.
Yeah.
One of my best watched videos as of the last 30 days was one I did on Brie Larson, because people misinterpreted, misled other people on what she actually said a couple of years ago. The movie, they want that movie to fail because Brie Larson is in it and because it's three women that are leading that movie. And that's not, I don't think those are real comic fans. At least I don't think, right? But it's interesting.
They said the same things too about Black Panther having the movie can't do well because it's a primarily African-American cast. They said the same thing about Shang-Chi. Yep. So that mob is unfortunately, I think, always going to be there,
There's a lot of racist idiots out online, is what you're saying, Ed.
The challenge is that the writing's not good in a lot of ways, right? The writing's not as maybe as what it was before, but then it's to the point that I made before about, the turnout for the movies isn't as strong. So, Black Panther 2 made $853 million, but it's trash because it didn't make as much as the first one. Well, the economy is night and day between those two movies. So how can you say that?
It's a different business model. Yeah.
It's a different time, right? Captain Marvel made 1.1. It's trash. People only saw that because of Endgame. Well, it still made $1.1 billion. Yeah, you can't just throw it out, but that's the stuff that people do.
I was listening to a music podcast prior to this, and I think what the issue that you're mentioning about fans, and really like that mob mentality and what they deem as, a success and just focusing on number, which is such a backwards way of thinking. But this particular music podcast was talking about how fans online will rip an artist apart if they only sell 10,000 albums. And it's like, damn, 10,000 albums. You know what I'm saying? It's
my analogy to that is like, hey, McDonald's served over 1 billion burgers. Do they make the best hamburgers? I don't think so. But they've served 1 billion of them. What that numbers mean.
But that's the crazy thing about it is, some of these people probably hadn't even heard what the artist's song was about. They probably never even listened to it. They saw a headline. Oh, he's a failure. He only sold 10,000. 10,000 is a lot. And maybe they were sold for $100. Wasn't there a rapper that released some album charged $100 for it?
There's a few artists that have done it, but I think who you're talking about is the late great Nipsey Hussle, who put out a mixtape and was charging $100. And he sold out. I forgot how many he sold, but it was enough to where, he went the indie route and, it was enough to financially definitely support him on his own. But, he leaned into, I think his mentality was like, if I only have 100 fans, that's who I'm catering towards. Fuck trying to get, cast a wide net and only catch 2 fish. Like, I'm focused on building a community.
He focused on quality and not quantity.
Which brings us to, I think, a good stopping point for this particular subject, which is, it sounds like, curtain has been unveiled. We see a bunch of the cracks. I'm curious what happens next, right? I don't think that this article comes out just willy-nilly. I want to see the time. I'm trying to figure out the pieces for the timing of it. Like I've heard like a rumor about them trying to maybe position this in a way to fire certain execs there and, behind the scenes stuff. That's all like, hearsay. But I think the timing of it is interesting. And I'm curious to see what comes out of it next steps, right? Like, look, you've got your business all up in the public now. Everything that people have said about the company is coming to light. What happens next? What happens with this Jonathan Majors? I think that'll be a huge precedent going forward, right? Because if they put all of their chips on one guy to be the big bad and be the face of this next chapter, what happens when he's out the way? I'm very curious to see how the MCU pivots. And if, the blue chips they got in their back pocket with Fantastic Four and Deadpool 3 and X-Men are enough to save. And I say save like very like loosely, right? Like we've just said, this is fucking Disney and Marvel.
Yeah.
They don't need no saving. Like they're really just competing against themselves. But unfortunately, they're competing with like, something unprecedented. Like, how do you compete against, MCU, phases 1 through 3? It's gonna have to look different. I think people's expectations need to adjust as well. So with that being said, we could definitely just do a whole episode about this one particular article. But I want to move on to our second topic for today. Reggie, this is one that you brought to the table. It sounds like this is Warner Media's response to basically like kind of like this article in the state of Marvel's affairs and their plan to not, fall into the same trap, which in my opinion was kind of a loose plan, but I want to hear from you, man. Go ahead and set us up. What is this article about?
It's definitely a loose plan,
Very loose. I'm like,
I read the article and I was like, well, duh. Like, at the end, it was like, well, duh. But this is an article quoting Casey Blois. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
He is
HBO CEO.
The CEO of HBO. And he was doing a press event where they were talking about the 2024 Max and HBO slate. And as you would imagine, anytime you get in front of a reporter, they're going to ask you all types of questions, right, about all the stuff that you were working on. And I want to read a couple of excerpts from this because he spoke about the fact that the plan for Max, formerly HBO Max, is for the app to still be a hub for tentpole shows adapted or spun off from Warner Brothers movies, which includes what DC is actually doing. James Gunn and Peter Safran, huge part of that. But when he was asked about, tentpoles and he was asked about hero fatigue, here's what he said. He said, I think tentpole fatigue is telling the same story over and over again. I actually think that's the definition of insanity, but whatever. He noted in this interview that while he admired Marvel's output of movies and shows, the studio might be suffering from fatigue because there's a lot of them. And the article highlights that he didn't go into a whole lot of detail on like what HBO Max was going to be releasing for the DCU. He was a little nebulous on like the timing of when these movies from DC were going to be coming out after Superman Legacy. And it's probably because they're still trying to figure it out. They're still making adjustments, knowing that at least the actors are still striking. So that's been a huge hindrance. But he says DC is trying to tell different stories, different styles, to not do the same show over and over again. And he highlights that Peacemaker is a different show than Penguin. He says there's not uniformity. And later in the interview, he says, When you let quality be your guide, I think that's a good way to balance it. And again, my response to all of that is duh. He literally didn't offer anything that was unique in that response.
Can I also note that when he draws that comparison of, Peacemaker is nothing like Penguin, we haven't seen Penguin. I mean, I believe you, but brother, we ain't seen Penguin yet. It's not even out, How am I supposed to know that?
But I mean, I'm guessing what he's like is it's going to be gritty. It's going to be gritty Batman was gritty versus Peacemaker, which was, I guess, dark comedy, right? But again, it's like you're not offering up really anything substantive in this. And if you take a step back from it, he's simply saying everything that Marvel has already said. We're going to focus on quality and not quantity. That's literally what Marvel has said. But it's interesting, again, going back to the earlier conversation, because this does dovetail. People have to acknowledge that the MCU was focused on making as much money as they possibly could during the pandemic to keep themselves afloat. That is why they crammed and all these shows down the throats of the special effects people, because they were trying to make money, and it backfired. Yes, they made a ton of money, but they hurt a lot of people, right? Hurt a lot of careers, probably ran a lot of people out of the industry, but then they also damaged their reputation and created a big hill for them to climb. And to your point, maybe they should have just taken a step back and been like, you know what? We just had an amazing run. Let's take a little bit of a break. But when you are pulling in billions of dollars, that's hard to be like, you know what? I think that's enough money for
Plus
now.
you have like stockholders to...
I'm one of them.
I realize how optimistic and kind of foolish I sound, right? Like, we're talking about the most capitalistic of capitalistic companies. You don't stop after 30 billion, but back to your DC point. Yeah, it sounds like all these things that like you would expect. It's like, yes, it should be quality over quantity. Like, these very basic things like, okay. And I get that maybe
quality, eh? Tell me more about this. Quality.
Can you spell that?
Is that a cue? Yeah.
And it's funny because like DC has spent, Warner Brothers has spent how many years trying to capture that same magic Marvel has? You have like 8 or 9 years of failure.
Isn't it crazy how, some shit just comes back around? I find it really funny that at the height of MCU, hell, on this show alone, right? We would talk about DC's failed attempts at trying to replicate, the combined universe, and all the movies was terrible. And how now with all the focus being on Marvel, their failures. And here's the thing too that article really highlighted is that this has all kind of happened in the last 3 years. Like all of these challenges and these, the ball being dropped just within 3 years we're pointing at. I'm sure there's a lot more to unearth, looking holistically at the MCU, but in the past 3 years. But the same thing the reverse could be said about Warner Brothers and DC. I think they've really hit a stride lately, considering, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker,
Ezra
Batman.
Miller's Flash.
Black Adam. Don't skip over those now.
You're right. I guess I should bring us over those.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in the last 3 years, in the last couple years, DC has kind of hit a stride. And I think it comes from realizing, okay, clearly we can't do the interconnected universe that well. We can't do their shtick. So let's focus on self-contained, quality stories. Peacemaker. Peacemaker is not a good example because it literally was a spinoff. But it's not like it's trying to tell a overarching combined universe story. That was a spinoff. And I think it goes into what his plan is, where it's like we've got these tentpole movies, Suicide Squad, and now we can build off, spinoff shows off of that. It sounds like they're approaching it from less is more. If people are crying out for superhero fatigue, let's not put out as much, right? Like, let's focus on tentpole movies and maybe the occasional spinoff and really focus in on quality. Like, it doesn't sound like they're going to try to compete from let's pump out 5 shows, 5 movies. Let's have hell, I don't even think there's a DC, timeline or lineup, right? Like, it is nebulous.
There's like a Creature Commandos. And things are gonna.
Okay, so we know a few of the titles, but we don't know the intricate details of James Gunn's 10-year, or I don't think
it's a 10-year plan, but he's
okay.
only announced like the first 3 years or so.
And Reggie, that makes me think about what you said as far as, I think maybe you said it, correct me if I'm wrong, but like just always, I think there's something to be said about that nebulous nature and that mystery to it, where it's like we don't need to tell you everything we're doing. Let this shit be a surprise, let the quality and the stuff speak for itself. I think there is something to be said about always being connected, and the MCU playing like the social media game really well, where every San Diego Comic-Con, people were looking forward to the timeline and the news. It's like we wanted to know all of these details.
Yep.
And I think there's something to be said about quality being tied into just, a little bit of mystery.
I said that to somebody recently on social media, that if you remember back in the day, the only way for you to see your favorite celebrity or athlete or entertainer was to show up at the show up at the movies, right? That was show up at the game. That was your only way to see them. Now you see them on social media in their house. There's no mystery to it. You know what I'm saying? You see them waking up in the morning. Hey, I just got up. I'm about to go work out and get an iced latte. Like you see so much of them. There's almost too much transparency, right? You have all of these guys that have these relationships with people in the studios that tell us all the details, all the Easter eggs. There's no surprises in anything just because there's so much information flowing to us. Potentially they need to pull back on some of that stuff and create more mystery, create more intrigue. Maybe that will hold people's interest a little bit longer, but it may be one of those things that to your point about being too optimistic, the cat may already be out of the bag and we can't ever go back to that. And
toothpaste is out of the tube.
I mean, well, if you flex the tube right, you can get some suction to get so, I mean, I've done it. You can do it. It take a little work.
Reggie, I love you, man. That was such a good rebuttal. All right, you want to talk about optimism right there? That is some optimism.
I'm gonna try it tonight. If it don't work,
Ed's gonna send me a picture. And just gonna
send you a picture.
I'll send you a video how to on Instagram where you can see how you flex it and it'll pull it right back, bro. I got you, Ed. No, but it's all of this stuff is interesting, man. I think that they need to go back to the fundamentals of just tell good stories. And I don't care whether it's in the comic book, it's on the small screen or big screen. Just tell a good story. Stay out of all the politics and some of the nonsense. Just tell a good story. Have some diversity of thought as well. And what I mean by that is not everything has to be a superhero. Not everything has to be somebody in spandex. As much as I like spandex, let's tell some different types of stories to attract different people and also to maintain people's interest. That was one thing that Casey did say. He was basically like, we want to tell different stories, right? And so the Penguin isn't Peacemaker. He's right, because I'm guessing Penguin probably won't be wearing a costume. He'll have on an outfit versus the spandex eagle that Peacemaker wears. But I think diversity of storytelling will go a long way. And both Marvel and DC have amazing catalogs. Dust it off and let's tell some good. I mean, that's why they're getting their butts kicked when it comes to comics, because everything is spandex. And that's why the indies are doing so well, because they're telling Manga's incredible.
Killing it. Yeah.
Why? Because they're telling different stories that appeal to different people. And it's not the same story with a young version, an old version, a future version, a past version, a savage version, a tame. It's like the same stuff. Do something different and maybe people will continue to show up for it, like Oppenheimer and Barbie and Super Mario Brothers. I haven't seen any of those movies, so I'm guessing they were all very diverse. But who knows?
Like I would say, I've seen 2 or 3 of those movies.
No, Mario and Oppenheimer are kind of similar.
Atomic, I'm sure there's something to be said about Atomic Age.
And I thought you were gonna say Barbie, man. If I see you posing next to that box, brother.
Ed showed up opening day in all pink. All right? He has some pink Air Force Ones and a pink top. All right. Actually, now, Ed, I kind of want to see you in an all pink outfit. Would you do that next episode? Come on.
I'll wear a pink velour jumpsuit for you.
Try something different. Try something different.
Juicy.
All right. I think that puts a pin on that one. Let's go to some good news with an actual plan that DC had announced that had some actual details and a solid plan. Ed, you want to talk about this new line of compact comics that they hope to bring new readers into bookstores and etc. Care to talk about
this is a great idea. DC is coming out with DC Compact Comics. Are basically, I think, launching 10 titles of some of their top graphic novels, shrinking them down to close to the manga book size, and they're wanting to put them in all, big box stores, what they call transit stores, like airport gift shops, things like that, and keeping it like at $10. Like I said, they want to get new non-existent readers. They actually, in bookstores, they want to kind of remove themselves from the comic book manga section and put them in like thriller, sci-fi, whatever category you want to put them in. And the only thing that I'm kind of hoping is that I'm hoping they let comic stores get these as well, have access to these, because when I worked at the comic store, that's such a great sell. It's like, yeah, I've heard about this Watchmen. Oh yeah, we have this $50 artist edition, this $30 hardcover, and this $25 paperback.
Damn, can I dip my toe in
it's
the pool?
Like, geez, oh, okay, but $10. Like I said, Image has been doing that with a lot of their first trades. They do the first issue, the buck first issue thing, but this is a cool idea because we're getting it out to different, and it's a good mix. Like some of the titles, like I said, Watchmen, All-Star Superman, Batman Court of Owls, Far Sector, which is a really cool pick. It's a very, contemporary pick. Wonder Woman Earth 1, which is a strange one, in my opinion. American Vampire, Batman Hush, Harley Quinn, Gotham City Sirens, and Darwin Cook's Catwoman, and Darwin Cook and Ed Brubaker's Catwoman, Trial of the Catwoman. So pretty cool first wave of books to come out. And like I said, it's slightly bigger than the manga size, so it's even easy to read. Some of those big ass books are hard to read. Like I said, I think this is a really good idea to kind of broaden your readership and have access to, hopefully get new fans who are into comics. Like I said, keep this industry alive.
I think the only thing first of all, thank you for recapping that, Ed. I think my only remark on the maybe more pessimistic side is that we won't see these until like June of next year. I kind of wish they would have had these out like maybe a little sooner. Because, this is like one of those, being a 24-hour news cycle, this is something that, will definitely be forgotten by June next year. But it is, if I understand it correctly, comic shops can order these, but they're really taking that push, like you said, to like, your big box stores, your bookstores, the Target being one of them. And it's funny you brought up Target because I recently bought a Last Ronin hardcover from Target because it was way cheaper than buying it off Amazon.
I saw a Junji Ito coloring book at Target.
What?
I about lost my mind. I'm like, what is this doing in here? This isn't for kids.
That's pretty interesting. Reggie, do you think this will be enough to, bring in a new crop of readers and bring in some fresh blood when it comes into, just comic book fans and making new readers out of them?
No.
Oh, wow.
No. Huh. I think this is, and I'm super optimistic, but I think that this is a miss.
Okay.
This is a great opportunity that they potentially will fumble on. And here's why. They are trying to compete with manga, right? Lower price point, bang for buck in terms of page count. It is a low onboarding point, right? Because it's a self-contained story, right? So they're doing some of the right stuff. Manga kicks comics' tail because of the scope of the stories that are being told. 10 superhero stories, essentially. Different genres. Where's the sci-fi? Where's the horror? Where's the action? Where's the western? Where's the romance? If you want to attract new readers, offer up some different content beyond spandex. Like all three topics we've hit on tonight, I've already connected all of them because they're all very much connected. I think that what DC is attempting to do is unique. It is different, but they didn't go far enough. They're not diversifying the content. If you want to attract new readers, give them something other than spandex. Look at what the indies are doing. They have comics about firemen and police officers and detectives. And I mean, it's all of these different stories that are being told that have nothing to do with capes and cows. I think that DC has to look at this. And I think that that's the miss.
If I could play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
what would you add to that lineup? Because I mean, isn't it? Because I look at this list and I see like American Vampire. I think that kind of fits into your horror. It's not spandex.
That's it. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Hush. How many times can you reprint Hush? It's the same meat in a different wrapper.
Which one? So what would you add to this lineup that would diversify?
Which one of those appeals to women? 24% of readers, comic book readers, are women. Where's the romance? Where's the little girl comic that might appeal to a little kid? Right? I won't let my boy read Hush. I can tell you that. Right? Even to a little boy. Right? Where is the diversity? Where is like the sci-fi, just straight up Buck Rogers type stuff? Not Buck Rogers, but you know what I mean. Like something like that. Something different.
I think Far Sector does, but I see what you're saying.
What is the James Tyan? The James Tyan book that's super popular.
He's got a few. Nice House on the Lake.
Nice House on the Lake. Great story. Give us that. Watchmen is a little different, but it's still capes, right? Where is the non-superhero content? If you go back in time and you look at what Marvel and DC used to put out, they used to put out a ton of romance comics, monster comics, Godzilla stuff, right? Tarzan. I mean, you name it. It's become nothing more than superheroes. At one point, I think that 70%, 74% of the books that DC released feature Batman.
Oh, yeah.
In a month. 74% of them. There's no diversity there. It's all Batman. At what point do you stop riding the coattails of Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Wolverine? Right? If you want new readers, give them something new and different, and maybe you will get them to come in and check out what you have to offer.
I agree to a certain point, but I also think that this is their bread and butter, right? Like you bring up Marvel and DC having produced, all those genres, but it wasn't really until they hit the superhero stride that they really made a name for themselves. Now, I do agree there is room, especially if we're talking DC and we're talking like other non-superhero stuff. It is surprising that they haven't tapped into any of like the Vertigo stuff, especially if their goal is to attract, more mature, maybe, readers that might be swayed away from, spandex. I think there is definitely room for more of that. But at the same time, I don't front them for reusing Watchmen or Batman. It's like these are considered the classics and, the icons.
The classics for whom? The classics for whom?
But you would hope that the classic for a comic fan would also translate to regular.
Comic fans are already going to comic shops. Comic fans have already read Hush. They've already read these stories. They probably have masterpieces of them, individual issues of them. If you're trying to attract new readers, then stop publishing the same stuff that we've all bought repeatedly in different formats.
But they're not targeting us, though. So if we're targeting new readers, maybe they haven't read Hush or Watchmen.
And this is like the first wave, too. So they're kind of...
Is it the first wave? Because I haven't read that they were going to diversify any of the content.
I do agree. There's room for improvement and diversity in this line. But at the same time, I do think that the little bit of diversity that I see in this is a good start. And if there is more releases to be had, I think that'll be the true test. I understand.
They should say it now. They should say it now. They should say, we are starting with these, but we are going to diversify. Because if you remember, Jim Lee went all about diversity, right? Diversity of creators, diversity of content. Where is it? We don't see it. It's still the same stuff being told. Do something different. Because let's do this. Let's play it out. Let's say that they release this stuff and it doesn't sell. Well, why didn't it sell? You've only had one test. There's no B. Why not have a B? There's no chances being taken at Marvel and DC right now. There's no stakes. There's nothing at risk.
I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think you're going to find that in this corporate comic world.
I think if Image had taken this idea, that would be very interesting to see.
They do stuff like that with their dollar first issues, but as far as going into like Target and stuff, yeah.
But that's not to say that DC couldn't also do this, right? Like Vertigo has so much that they could offer. that would kind of fit in with that diversity.
Yeah, and I do agree with the Batman fatigue because, like I said, Black Label was the, I guess, supposed,
Vertigo 2.0.
Yeah, but it ends up becoming a Batman label. There's most of their titles have been Batman stories.
And what was the most
R-rated
exciting
Batman
thing about that? Batwang.
Yeah,
And Lee Brahamo, or Lee the artist, his cover art is amazing.
he's a great artist.
Bramejo?
Yeah, Bermejo.
Yeah,
But when was the last time, legitimately, when a comic fan was actually excited about something that Marvel or DC were doing? Legitimate. It's been a while.
I think because I'm on the spot right now, but if I was just to pick one, just quickly off the bat, Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman Dead Earth, which was a Black Label story, felt like a very unique take. Like, granted, yes, it was telling a Wonder Woman story, but that one felt like they gave him creative liberty to tell his own story.
When did that come out?
2 years ago?
2 years?
2 or 3 years ago.
So it's been 2 years since you were excited about something.
No, I mean, come on.
I know, but that was the question, right? When was the last time you were really excited about something? You cited a story from 2 years ago.
Are Marvel or DC or just comics in general?
Pick one, bro. It doesn't matter. Pick one. Pick one.
Transformers, I was excited about.
That's not
Wait.
Marvel or DC, is it?
Oh, I thought you said, I just asked that.
Yeah, he said Marvel
You said
or
everything.
DC.
Okay, Marvel. Well, I'm the.
Yeah, Reggie, you're kind of talking to two people that have slowly swayed away from having Marvel or DC on their
Like
poll.
But why? Why have you swayed away from
because
it?
I grew up with it, right? Like, to a certain
So
point.
did I.
It becomes like, what else can I get from this? Like, now I follow writers and artists. So Jonathan Hickman, for example, did bring me back to Marvel recently. I was really excited for his, the relaunch of the Ultimate Universe. But Reggie, to your point, yes, if I'm speaking honestly and truthfully, if you look at my poll list, it is primarily Image, right? Like news stories, different things, but occasionally I will go kind of peek my head back in.
My tastes have kind of gotten odd over the years, or since I was a kid, I should say. So I got heavy metal way too young. But as far as like, DC and Marvel stuff, it has to be something where it's an artist / writer that I'm following. Like the Raphael Grandpa's Batman Gargoyle of Gotham. I was stoked to see that, and it is beautiful comic. But I understand what you're saying. But with like, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, because I'm usually in the IDW Image,
I do a show every single week on the channel, and I talk to people, and I'm like, well, what are you reading? What are you buying? What are you most excited about? A lot of people will buy Marvel and DC because they grew up with it, and that's just what they do, right? But when they cite what they're reading, what they're excited about, it's not Marvel and DC. And if DC is going to take a step to compete against manga, because that's what they are doing with this move, right? Manga is mentioned several times. One of the major things that they are missing is diversity of content. If you are going to take down the king, because manga is the king, diversity of content is how you're going to attract new readers, not regurgitation of the same stories that you've been printing for the last 10 and 20 and 30 years.
That's a fair enough point. And if I may add, Chip Zdarsky Daredevil. That has been the last one that I've been super excited, which, by the way, ended just like, I think, last month, by the way. So that's a recent one. Take that, Reggie. I'm fucking with you. It's been a while. I think because it's been a while since I've had like C on one of these episodes, so I haven't had much of like that pushback. But Reggie, that was a healthy little debate back and forth, man. I appreciate that.
No, well done.
All right, Ed, very good topic. Reggie, very good conversation going on. I am curious to see if, you know what, to your point, I don't see anything on here talking about future releases. So I'm curious to see if this will have some legs to it. I get having, Watchmen and Batman Hush in that initial release. That's just kind of like where they go to. I think for any diehard comic fan, you see those, you're like, all right, yeah, next, yeah. It's almost like, it's almost to be expected. But to your point, I will concede that they have the ability to tell diverse stories, and maybe they're saving it for a second launch. We'll see. All right. With that being said, that is the last topic that we've got lined up for this first segment. This is where I look to our listeners and ask them to chime into the conversation. If you're still here with us and if you're still listening and you've got an opinion to share, if you've got, if you agree with something we said, maybe you disagree or you just want to add to the conversation, just in general, let us know. We love to hear from our listeners, especially when it comes to topics like these. So if you got something to say, you want to get it off your chest and have it on the podcast, feel free to write us a short email at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com, or you could send us a DM on Instagram and Twitter. We would love to hear from you regarding any of the topics we share today. Now, normally, this is the part where we turn the corner and we do our Fistful of Comics segment. It's where we talk about, the new comic books coming out in a month or so, the ones that you should be reading, the one that you should be, pre-ordering. And normally we have our good friend, Ben Kingsbury, the owner of Jacksonville's premier comic shop, Gotham City Limit, help us out with that. But you know what? It's been a busy week for him at the shop, and he didn't have time to get his picks in. But he had news of his own to share. All right. Ben had breaking news that he wanted us to share on this podcast. And that piece of news is that there is an opportunity for listeners to own a part of Jacksonville comic history, a piece of Gotham City Limit history, with the second print run of TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Last Ronin, #1. The Gotham City Limit exclusive variant for issue 1 is coming back for a second printing. Just some context, if maybe you missed out a few years ago, back in October, I want to say 2020, issue 1 of TMNT Last Ronin came out, and Gotham City Limit was given an incredible opportunity to have their own custom shop exclusive variant cover. Tyler Kirkham did the artwork for that. It turned out awesome. I want to say that first print run sold out. So here's your opportunity to own a piece of Jacksonville and Gotham City Limit history. They're doing a second print run of that infamous cover. It'll come out actually the same day that this podcast comes out, Wednesday, November 8th. It'll be available to purchase in the shop as well as online. So even if you don't live in Jax, you can still take your comic shopping experience to the limit by going to GothamCityLimit.com. You can purchase the comic from there. I believe it's $15 online, but it's only limited to 400. So I imagine those will go pretty quick. Once again, you can purchase it in store at Gotham City Limit here in Jacksonville on Southside Boulevard, or you can buy it online at GothamCityLimit.com. Limited to 400. You don't want to miss out, especially if you missed out on the first print run. Usually second printings sometimes go for more than the first printing. I know because I've got a few second printings that I'm just holding on to with the hopes I'll be able to retire one day. So who knows? Maybe this shop exclusive will be worth much more in the future, but you won't know unless you pick up a copy. So big shout outs to Ben. I'm sure we'll hear from him sooner than later. And in lieu of a Fistful of Comics segment, this actually gives us an opportunity to catch up on listener emails and in fan mail. It's been a while since we got to read some emails and hear from listeners. You guys know I love hearing from the listeners. I love when you guys get involved. And fortunately for us, we got 2 emails to read today. And our first email comes from a longtime friend of this show. I mean, this is a guy that I've known for a long time. Ed, I know you've got some history with him as well, but he's a longtime supporter of the show. His name is Chad Landenberger, and he sent in an email this week that I want to read. He writes in, he wrote, "Hey, Short Boxers, I'd like to start by saying I've listened to your Daniel Warren Johnson interview twice already. Great job and congrats. I've been a fan of his since Murder Falcon, and he's an artist I get excited telling non-comic book fans about. Additionally, I like to champion Scavenger's Reign on Max, an adult animated sci-fi series by Titmouse. It's about space truckers stranded on an alien planet who go through these weird and convoluted ways of using the local fauna. I get bits of Cronenberg, Mobius, and Annihilation. There are just a few episodes out, and so far it's my vote for the best animated series of the year. Love y'all. Keep up the great work." Big shout out to Chad. That was a good email. Have any of you watched this Scavenger's Reign show?
I have to look into it.
No, not me.
I mean, he kind of sold me on this Cronenberg, Mobius, and Annihilation mix right there, especially with Mobius. And I feel like Mobius, if I hear the word Mobius, it's like XYZ and Mobius, I'm in. I'll check that out. Thank you, Chad. All right, our next email comes from a friend of the show we haven't heard from in a minute, all right? Captain Bruce Squid. You remember that name, Ed?
Is that the... Yeah.
That was the most that was unbelievable, Ed.
That's the Australian guy, or no?
No, that's not the Australian guy. That's Matt Godwin you're thinking of.
Okay.
Captain Bruce Squid.
Sure.
Is Chris Jenks.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah. All right. This email comes from Captain Bruce Squid. All right. We haven't heard from him in a minute. He wrote, yo, what up, Shortbox? It's been a while. Too long at that. First off, I want to thank you for the Patreon box that you sent out a while ago. You can tell the books were picked with care and they were right up my alley. I've been radio silent for the last few months. Been a lot of ups and downs. Messed up my back at work and wasn't able to drive, which is my job. My future was up in the air. I unsubscribed to a bunch of things because I had no idea how long I was going to be out. Well, after 2 months of physical therapy, your boy is back. The books you sent and a lot of YouTube helped me make it through. I'm back on the road and I'm good. Wife and children are good. So I got a few extra bucks I can spare a month if you catch my drift. Anyway, I look forward to keeping in touch as always. Thanks for all that you guys do. Chris Jenks, a.k.a. Bruce Squid.
Nice.
Chris, I don't know if you wanted me to read all of that. That sounded like a lot of TMI. But look, I'm very excited that, you got healed up.
Yeah,
that
man.
life is looking good. Yo, and he just joined the Patreon back again. So
Nice.
Welcome back to the Patreon.
Yeah, I'm glad he's doing better.
Oh, yeah.
Backs are tricky. You mess up your back, it makes everything miserable. You can't sit, you can't lay.
Yeah, C was out for like 2 months when he got his back surgery. Yeah, that is no joke. So, Chris, I'm glad to hear the recovery went well. And real quick, speaking of Patreon and patrons and whatnot, we did get a new patron that joined this month or last month, Ed. Let's go and get a round of applause ready for our newest Patreon member, the newest member of the Patreon community, a guy, Justin McCoy. Welcome, Justin. Interesting story about Justin. Justin goes to the same barbershop that I go to. I think he gets his haircut by the same guy as well. Ended up learning that he's into comic books. I think, I was in the shop. My barber was asking me about the podcast. He overheard it. He was like, oh, check it out. And you hear that a lot. Oh, check it out. I'll check it out.
Never happens.
You're
Usually.
like, all right. He's going to forget about this the minute he walks out this door. Not at all. Every time I see him at the shop now, which is, one of those things where it's like once you see someone, now you see them everywhere. I see him at Gotham City Limit all the time. Super cool. And it's awesome to see him come on as a supporter of the Patreon. So welcome to the Patreon, Justin, and big shout outs to you. Reggie, I do got one question for you, man, and that's like, what do you got going on? Because like I mentioned in the intro, which feels like a long time, a while ago, you are a multi-talented guy.
Mm-hmm.
You run the YouTube, you run an awesome Instagram. Like I said, you cover. If we're being honest, you've pretty much touched on all of these topics this week as they come out, and I think that's the power of doing like short content, bite-sized content. You could be quick, you're agile. And you're just as well spoken and just as good giving your opinions on the short form as you are long content. But that's not the only thing you do. I know that you also you're a comic writer yourself. You actually you're a published author. Like, what else is going on in your world?
I like to stay busy, brother. So just off the top, husband and father is probably the biggest things that I do, right? A couple of kids and a wife and a career. The comic stuff is what I do for fun, just because I absolutely enjoy it. And to your point, I have a YouTube channel called Regie Collects. And as part of putting out several videos, long form videos and live streams per week, we also do short form content, as you mentioned, on Instagram and also on YouTube. But then, we've put out a couple of guides, the Guide to Smart Comic Collecting. We did the first one on the tail end of the pandemic, and there are two guides that are really designed to help people be smarter about the hobby of comic book collecting. And that success of that, we sold 4,200 copies of the very first volume that we put out. That led me to start putting out my own comics. So I've put together a team of some great writers, some great creators from the Kubert School, and we've been self-publishing a couple of comics. And we have 4 issues of one called Isolation that has been written by a guy by the name of Doug Bratton, extremely talented guy. And then we released our second title, Marcus, at New York Comic Con, written by a guy by the name of Scott. Just talented people that I have a chance to work with. I can't draw to save my life, but I do have the ability to find some really talented writers and to hire some really talented artists to put out this content. And we've had some decent success, right? With Isolation specifically, we've printed and sold more than 10,000 copies of Isolation, which is a lot for me to sell them, to edit them, to personally ship them all. That's a lot for me. But it's all it's fun stuff, man. So in terms of what we have coming up, a lot of content coming out on YouTube and Instagram every single week. That's the plan.
Hell yeah. Reggie, look, I respect the hustle and I respect the quality and care and attention that you put into your content. And I want to thank you so much for hopping on with us, man. Like, having your opinion and your voice was excellent. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have links to, your YouTube. I have links to your Instagram in the show notes. I highly encourage our listeners to check out what you got going on, become a fan, become a subscriber, become a supporter. Listeners, me and Ed are going to stay on for a little longer. We're going to hop over on the Patreon, talk about some of the other headlines we didn't have a chance to get to, as well as do our own champion season spotlight. But besides that, there you have it, Shortbox Nation. That is our show for today. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you're not a member of our Patreon community yet, what are you waiting for? Come on, guys. Here is your sign. Here's your sign. Join us over at patreon.com/theshortbox. Not only will you get access to bonus content, extra episodes, and free comics, but you'll also be supporting the show and helping us keep this thing going. Come be a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/theshortbox. There'll be a link for that in the show notes. And if you don't want to pay a few bucks for bonus episodes, all good. Like we've been talking about, this economy's pretty funky, all right? It's tough times out there. Completely get it. I just ask for one small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Or better yet, tell a friend or tell your favorite comic nerd about the show to have them subscribe, because word of mouth and ratings really help us out, all right? I think Reggie will go ahead and tell you those small things don't cost you nothing, but they mean a lot to us. So leave a review if you haven't, tell a friend, and most importantly, take care of yourselves, go read your comics, and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll catch you next week. Peace.